Hello, everyone, and welcome to All of Us. My name is Rachel Wade. I am the Chief Encourager and founder here at All of Us, and I want to welcome you to episode 60 that I have titled All of Us Reset. Hooray! And today I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend, Taylor Nichols. Taylor's been in my life for the last several years, but I want to say this before I let you introduce your own self, Taylor. You all need to know that she is an amazing, amazing woman. There's never been someone that I've met like Taylor. She is a seer of people, and she is a huge reason why I started All of Us, because this was a place where I wanted for people to feel seen and loved and known and valued. And Taylor has done that for me in a look, in a glance, in a posture of sitting with me like no one else has in my life. And so, with that, Taylor, welcome to All of Us. Would you introduce yourself to the All of Us community?
Thanks, Rach. My heart's tender thinking about the gift of friendship and how it has its own journey, right? And the gift that we've never lived in the same city, and we have had, honestly, if you look at what, like Mel Robbins said, is needed for a friendship, we don't have proximity.
Yeah.
We have some similar life seasons, but also some very different life seasons, and yet we have been able to deeply connect in a way, and I'm so humbled and grateful for that. But I'm Taylor Nichols. I live in Austin, Texas. The things right now in my life that are most defining, I think, for me in this season of life is that I'm a mom to 4 kids in 3 very different parenting seasons. I am a wife. I am a business owner, mostly a silent business owner in this season of my life. I am a longing podcaster. I've laid my podcast down for a while to be a little bit more present in my day-to-day life. And I am a human learning how to human. There's been a lot of that in the last 3 years for me, of unlearning a lot of things and learning to accept my humanity. I think that's something that I have always tried to do for others. And that shifted a lot into what I have been asked to do for myself. And that has been the hardest journey so far. But yeah, I love to travel. I love a good meal. I'm a hospitality junkie. I love just the idea of being gathered around a table or in a living room with your feet popped up, getting to know one another's hearts.
You know what, now that you say that about your hospitality and you know how you love to gather people at a table, that is who you are. Like what I just explained about you, like that hospitality is more than just a table setting and more than just a good dish, which you can prepare and you can decorate like nobody's business. If you saw the way that Taylor decorates for her kids for their birthdays, you'd be like, can I be one of her kids? Because it's just so beautiful. So
I'm not sure it was my best idea because they have 8
now they have an expectation.
And I have 4 kids.
Right. Oh man, but that hospitality is displayed in and through you. So when I say that you're a seer of people, that's you being hospitable, you being a sanctuary for people. It comes through in so many different ways, and I'm just so honored to have been able to experience that through our friendship. But it's so cool that when you introduce yourself and you say the things that you love, that is so clear in and through how you just live your life. And so, yeah. Well, that's exactly why I wanted you to come on the show, aside from you being someone that everyone needs to hear from and learn from, is that you have gone through a lot of different reset. And I titled this episode, All of Us Reset. In January with Jo Saxton, we talked about recalibration. But now as we go to reset, you know, the dictionary definition of it is returning to a default state. So different than recalibration. And with your journey over these last few years, Taylor, it seemed right for you to come in and speak on this. So with the definition of reset, is there anything that you would like add to that? Just your own definition of how you would describe that to the All of Us community?
Messy.
Yeah, right. Why?
I think it feels important. I can feel in my soul right now to say this is definitely not a journey that I have come to with wisdom and grace. It is one that I was led into maybe a little bit more kicking and screaming, and one that I think for a while I just tried to outrun. I tried to recalibrate instead of accepting that a reset was what was needed, if that makes sense. And so, you know, I was thinking about that question. I think it can look so different for so many different people. And for me, different parts of my journey have looked different, and have taught me a lot. I think the one thing for me that's important to say is that I don't think I realized completely that that's what was happening in the moment. I think it wasn't like let's go whiteboard and then it's very clear and these are the areas. For me, it started with my body. My body shut down. My body said no, and my mind did not agree with my body, and my heart didn't agree with my body. And so there has been a work of alignment for reset, because I think that reset means all. You know, and so I think that would be maybe the best way I could say that is sometimes it takes time for the alignment of those things to come into agreement. And that for me has been part of the journey. But I think it can look different for everyone.
Right.
But I do think retrospectively, you look back on it and you're like, yeah. And now I know. I now know. So now I'm like, whoop, radar, you know, I need to spend some time, even if sometimes I'm just recalibrating because that's what life requires for a moment. It's like a pin or a Post-it note that's like, we're coming back to that. Because something's off. And I think it has to, for me, it's like aligned with my values, going back to my values and what is true. And a big season for me is that I think a lot of what I knew to be true had changed inside of the journey of humaning and becoming and learning. And so it was harder for me to recognize that, because there was, I couldn't go back to this thing that was like, oh, we're just gonna, you know, recalibrate here, make sure we're all in alignment. It was like, I didn't have a grounding point. And so everything needed to stop. And we needed to reassess and rebuild some of those foundational parts. I don't know if that's said very well, but
you've made me think about how often, you make me think about how often we are trying to recalibrate things that actually need a reset before we can recalibrate. It's like you went back, you had to reset some things. And now you said that you've recognized, okay, now that I've recognized that, now I can recalibrate. I'm just like wondering, what are the things in our life that we're trying to just like, oh, this is working, we'll just like try to recalibrate, we'll just need to do this. And the Lord's like, no, actually, that needs to go back to like the factory setting of what I intended for you, daughter. You know, instead of you trying to put a Band-Aid on this or shine or polish this thing up, when actually God's like, no, I actually need you to go back to the way I intended for your mind, for your body, for your soul. There's so much digging into that there. You mentioned that you kind of had to go back. It was kicking and screaming. You didn't realize that it was a reset, and it's been a journey over these last 3 years. I know on the blog you mentioned that it kind of maybe sort of kind of started with the pandemic. Can you kind of take us back to what you mean by you didn't recognize you needed the reset, and then this has kind of been this last 3 years for you?
Yeah. Two things. One, I want to say, I think there's a lot to going back to factory settings. I like that thought process. And as it relates to my personal story and going back to the intended design, I don't know that I ever knew that. So that would be, let's call that little girl Taylor. And little girl Taylor performed a lot to stay safe. There's a lot that she did. It was beautiful. And I have so much grace and appreciation for the way she survived in the world. But there is a part of me in this journey that's learned it's going back to set with the desires, the pain, the makeup of this essence, this personality, this soul that was gifted to me as a little bitty girl that I learned to mold in a way that would be accepted and safe in the world. And it's taken a lot of courage to go back to her. So I want to say that first.
Yes, so important to say.
And second of all, you were talking prior to the pandemic. What a lot of people don't know about my story is, so my oldest child is almost 15 years old, and my birth journey with him was very complicated. And during my pushing with him, I was kind of bearing down, and I felt like a stabbing pain in my upper back. And my family's known for weak backs, you know, but it bothered me. And then after my second child was born, within 4 to 6 months of that, I started having my back go out to a point that I was like locked and frozen for somewhere between 4 to 6 days. And that would happen every 6 months, and then it happened every 4 months. And it affected my life in a big way. But prior to that, I was introduced randomly. I mean, I've had surgeons tell me for 6 years that I need to fuse half of my back. And it was like, it's not like I picked up a box or, a couch and heard it. It just did not feel right to me. And so the world around me a lot made me feel like, well, when you're ready to get healed, you'll get the surgery and then you'll be better. But I would leave surgeon and go to pain management doctor. And I would say, if I do this surgery, will I still hurt? And they would say, I think you will still hurt. And so there was a lot of learning physically in terms of like my capacity for pain, and my capacity for not knowing my capacity, which maybe was the hardest part. I didn't know I didn't know what my limitations were. And that was so hard for me. And so I received some care through a chiropractor who practices Atlas, Atlas adjustment through 𝐭𝐞𝐞𝐭 chiropractic care. And I'm going to say this one thing about it, and then we'll move on. I was pretty much at a place of surrender to I may forever have this limitation and not be able to move all the time. And now how do I live within that with 4 children was my real journey of like, okay, you've allowed this to happen in my life, and you've also given me 4 kids. So what does this look like? This is uncomfortable.
Right. How am I supposed to do this?
laying on that bed, I felt a sense of peace, and I had felt a real sense of surrender. Like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Like, that's where my healing process had been like, okay, we'll try it and see. I'm not attached to it. And I felt my body start to untwist. Like, I literally could feel it like this, like it was an unlocking. And I remember asking the doctor, who's become just such a gift to me in my life, what do you think it is about you that is, you have this like real humble air to you, but it's very measured. It's like engineering meets science meets medical care, And he said, oh, that's an interesting question. I was like, what values do you hold? And he was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And so when I went back for my follow-up visit 3 days later, he said, I was thinking about that question. And he said, I think that what my partner and I, he has a counterpart at his office, what we share is the belief that we're trying to find the truth of the story. And we believe that the truth will set you free from pain.
Wow.
And like my soul was like, that's my faith journey. That is my life journey. And so after that adjustment, I have now been I have not had an episode in 3 years, and it's changed my life. But I think that being released from physical pain opened the door for me to do a lot of work that was more emotional and heart-centered work that I don't think I was available to in terms of healing, or what I like to term now layered healing. So that was one layer of the healing journey. And it took a while for my body and my mind to trust that process. And then we opened the door to the next one. And that's where I would say COVID enters. And what I don't think I realized about COVID at the time was that COVID and the political climate at the same time mimicked a lot of my experience within religious community as a child, in relationship to what side do you belong to? So you're here and you're safe in this group, or you're here and you are out of this group, but safe in this group. But if you fall in the middle, you are unsafe in both.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
what there was I've walked through a lot of grief. I had a lot of loss early in my life. And so there was something about COVID that felt comfortable to me. Like the world slowed down to a pace that
Yes.
felt right to me. Like I was like, oh, we're together, we're processing, we're physically doing things with our hands and like
Yeah.
going on walks, and that all felt good. But there was a distancing that happened with me in relationship to what I could belong to. And I didn't see, what I felt in my soul, I didn't see any space in the world that it aligned completely. That was specifically within some of the church community that I was involved with too, because I felt this real sense of understanding for the need for safety, physical safety, and wanting to respect that. And then I felt a lot of like disregard, or we have a right to gather communally, and we're gonna do that. And that my faith felt really like just disjointed in that, because I was like, wait, isn't this the opportunity as a believer for me to set with people where they are? So yeah, I think that was a beginning state for me of want to go back to some of the beliefs that I held and truth that I held being challenged. And I didn't know that because it just felt global. It just felt like, oh, this is everyone. And that's when I had a podcast. Our family purchased a school bus during that time. We renovated the school bus together. I made 3 agreements with my husband, which was, 1 is that we don't do the work, 2 is that the work is not done in our driveway, and 3 is that it is done within 3 months' time. Sometimes I ask God, why do you let me open my mouth? But that project took 3 years. It was in our driveway all 3 years. And we didn't really ever get on the road. When we did get on the road, it had a really tragic accident. And so this thing that we put all of our energy into, and a lot of hopes and dreams. And I think what I'm now aware of, there was a dream of discovery for me related to it, in terms of wanting to travel the US and see how other people were interacting and experiencing, and what their belief systems were, how it was shaping them. And that desire and need, I think that was a dream that really, really hurt the most. But we sat on the side of the road and we watched our bus burn, not to the ground, just the engine. It's in repair now, but and I just sat there, and I remember looking at God and being like, all of that sacrifice for this, which it took a lot of sacrifice, even in relationship to my grief journey, because that has made me be really present in the moment. So be like, rush to put kids to bed, and then going outside to like work on this thing, to get on the road, to create this opportunity, which was necessary. And it just felt disjointed. So I think I got off course there, but.
Oh, it's good. It's good. You're just reminding all of us that like resets, they look different, and often they're unplanned and we're not expecting them. But what we learn sometimes on the other side of them is actually the gold. And sometimes it's not the thing that we thought it would be. And even with the bus, and that was just so tragic. And I am grateful to hear that it's getting worked on, and that will be again. But I just wonder what gifts are on the other side, in light of the tragedy, the trauma that happened with the bus. Like I'm just so curious what that'll be like, Taylor, for you and for your kids.
Me too. Because my kids are no longer the kids that they were. Like I have a kid entering high school. So the dream of taking travel is a way that my soul has been wrecked and rebuilt. So that experience with our kids of traveling within our country to experience parts of it was very big. And that will not, that is done. That will not look the way that we thought it would. And you don't, like I can, even as you're saying that, it's like, I think the bus was an intentional reset, right? We were like, we're going to get on the road with our family for 6 months to a year. And we're going to learn this thing. We're going to reset our lives. Except it didn't look like that. And I still am I still don't know. I still don't have clarity. I mean, I think that's one of my greatest pains with the Lord is I'm like, man, you don't do all that work expecting to like create adventure and experience for your kids for the experience to be trauma. Like,
I know.
This is the story that they currently have. And I also learned a ton about how I don't like to disappoint people, but I really don't like to disappoint my kids. And I did a lot. We disappointed them a lot. They saw us fail a lot. And that was very, very painful. And it taught me a lot about how I was trying to protect them from things that were so related to my own story of not wanting to disappoint and wanting to measure up and meet them and create safety and opportunity and lack of disappointment. And yet it's hilarious. We wrote grit and tile on our bathroom floor, of our bus. And it's like, this isn't the grit I was thinking.
You're like, this is not the kind of grit we were trying.
I was thinking like cold water grit, and like ability to like navigate getting stuck in the mud. But yet I really I'm beginning to see like, the failure that I would not have leaned into willingly was part of the lesson. I just didn't want to be the teacher.
And I hear you. And I'm like, your story is reminding me of my current story with our house and how we fixed it up and made it so nice and provided this life for our kids, all for this storm to come and hit something out of our control, like that fire in that bus was out of your control. Yet our hearts as parents feel as if we're somehow responsible in the very thing that was bringing safety and joy and adventure to our kids' life. We're now it's traumatic. Is a storm in the house traumatic for my kids? And I feel responsible for that. So when I hear you talked about your bus story, I see myself feeling similar in my housing story. And at the same time, with compassion, I have to extend to the both of us in this moment and think that God is somehow trying to remind us that it's not wasted, and the reset and the beauty that we were giving our family is not wasted. I'm thinking about the videos that you posted and the pictures that you have of your kids at Home Depot, all the time, getting materials and in the bus and picking things out and the hands that you all use together to create together. Like that was a good reset, and there was so much in that for your family, and that's not lost. And what will be with the bus and your family will be something entirely different and out of your control and what you wanted it to look like. And so will this daggum house that we have when it's and us moving back in it, it's going to be a different house, and it's going to be a different bus, and it's going to be a different people, a different Nichols family, a different Wade family that's going to move back into these spaces. And it's the reset that we didn't want and plan for and don't quite, maybe never will understand, but it's what God has for us.
And maybe what we need most, right? Like, one of the very big things that has come out of that, my husband and I have been married almost 21 years. We got married as babies. And I'm Enneagram 8, but I really lean hard on peacekeeping on my 9 wing in terms of my home. And that bus was outside of our home, and it created a place to argue, to fight, to identify what was important to both of us. I'm married to an engineer. I am more of a creative. If I was going to live in that thing for a year, it was damn sure going to be pretty. If he was going to function, it was going to be functional. And those things don't always mesh. And that was about building, right? It was about the process of building and the aesthetic and the functionality. But what it was really about was the identity of our being represented inside of our marriage and our family. And it didn't end comfortable either. It wasn't like, oh, that's what we learned from that. It
Right.
just
No.
kind of like shook the foundation. And maybe like you think of an earthquake, like it's still standing there, but there's cracks and there are things that have to be fixed. And you have to ask, is it a wipe and we restart again? Or is it a fill in the holes? And that, even inside of our marriage and our family dynamic, I think that was a big part of what happened through that process. And we're still in the work of that. We're still in the rebuilding, and then being like, oh, wait, hold on, that wall's a little too heavy. We got to go back. We got to go back to the belief systems. We got to go back to like, what truths do I hold about you or about this or about marriage or about life, and identifying those together. So that was another thing that came out.
Yeah. And maybe that's the beauty in us, a beauty in it for us all, is even recognizing that shakeup can only create a like, okay, well, what does this need now? Like, does this need some, like, what is this doing in you? Oh, let's explore that. Oh, what is this doing in me? Oh, how do we honor who you are and who I am and who we are and what we know and what our foundation is? And does this need recalibration? Does this need to complete that? Like, sometimes I think that the shakeups and what we're learning from them, it's just being able to move and jive with all. Whereas if we didn't have that, it would be so static and so locked up. Like, I think about your back and I think about like the freedom that has created for you in different aspects of your being after you felt that release. Like what that unlocks and what the bus unlocked for you in, say, just using you and Dave in your marriage. It's not that it's all pretty and pristine and that you have it all together now. It's that y'all know now what that's touching on and how to like just freaking move and jive within it, even if it's messy and disastrous at times. And I think that that's the beauty in it all for us, like, is that in our marriages, in our parenting, like in what we call vocationally our work, like having it being shaken up a bit is not what any of us would want. But it's the beauty that we can experience with the Lord and the wholeness and the freedom that I don't know, Taylor, if we can get to any other way.
I don't think we do. I don't think we can. And we haven't talked a lot about this, but my body has been the resource in which God has helped my mind and heart come to terms. And understanding the way we're created and how our nervous systems work. I mean, my healing came specifically through nervous system alignment, not being the messaging system from my brain to my body not being inhibited, so that it could heal.
Wow.
And my capacity in my nervous system has been pretty big for a really long time when my environment is controlled. I'm a high capacity person. I'm a real good pivoter. I'm a like, take it, let's go.
Yeah.
When my environment, I didn't know this because I have built a life where I could not control. I'm not a control freak, right? But I want to control my environment.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But when my environment could not be controlled, which COVID was part of that, right? I had 4 children at home. We pulled our kids out of school and they were home with us thinking we were going to be on the road. And then political atmosphere. So even in terms of relational control, I didn't really have a lot because people were figuring things out.
Yeah.
My capacity within my nervous system became so tiny. And I didn't know that was what was happening. I just knew I was changing. And I was really uncomfortable with the person that I was becoming. She didn't have it all together and she didn't know how to hold space for everyone. And she needed space held for her. And I don't think had that chaos not ensued, that I would not have actually, I don't think I would have ever had the willingness, the courage, or maybe even the awareness to know, oh, these are the parts of you that are asking to be healed. They're asking to be seen and grow. And I think you were saying a second ago, like that knowing required that knowing.
This might be a hard question and you might not know the answer, but what do you think would have happened to the Taylor 3 years ago if you wouldn't have stepped into caring for you finally, like finally saying, oh, my nervous system is shot. Like, what would have come of her as a wife, as a friend, as a mother, if you would have kept operating in the way that you were?
That feels three parts to me. I'm going to go back for a second. When you were talking about like staying in that messy middle, one of the things that has become incredibly clear to me, and this is how I found safety. I left a church community as a 13, 14-year-old girl on my own to create a safe life, to create clarity, even to create alignment to my faith belief. I have a 14-year-old now. It has a whole new meaning to me now about that girl sitting with a 14-year-old child. Like, I'm like, whoa. So I really know how to create a different environment to create safety. What I learned is that I do not so much have the skill set, experience in my body, in my life experience, to know how to stay in a space and create safety. And
do it, but you don't know how to stay there. That's what you
yeah. So now I have a family that I really love and I want to stay with.
Yeah.
But part of being with them, part of my marriage, part of my children, part of my community compromised what I knew I needed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, I think there's a couple ways that it could have gone. One that I'm sure of is that whatever, I'm going to just use the word genius, is meant to come from the essence of my soul in this world. I don't know what that means, but I think we're all brought to this world with something to present back as an offering. I don't think it would have ever fully come to fruition. And it hasn't yet. I know I'm in process of what that looks like. So I think that would have been marred or maybe hidden. And that because of the ways that I've experienced other people's genius in the world, their gifting to me, and it's changed me, that makes me really sad to think that could be the case.
Yes. Me too.
I think it also would mean that the generational trauma and healing that is real and needed in all of our lives, that the cup that my children walked away with would have been a darker color, a more marred version than what I pray that they will. And I will tell you, from my 14-year-old to my 6-year-old, their cups look different. And that is the reality. And I have to trust that that's the story, right? So I am a different version of a 6-year-old mother to my Lundy Lou than I was to my Zayner. I needed Zane to be more of who I felt safe presenting to the world, that made me a good mom, that showed I was doing it right, than London, who I'm now like, we're on a journey of learning together.
Right. Like,
And I often don't know. And so I'm learning. So that, I think that would have been a case. And I also think, I don't think her life would have been as long. And I think she would have become a real shell of who she was meant to be. And I think that was, for a long time, it was a real spunky shell. But, if you want to go to the Feelings movie, I mean, I can even send pictures. I am Joy at Halloween. That is who I have been. But I have really learned, and I'm really learning to embrace sadness and the lessons of sadness. And I had an opportunity to experience a retreat, trauma retreat space, and I think I felt there for the very first time in my body physical, like fear, like debilitating fear, and overwhelming sadness. And that I remember thinking, like, I could feel in my body, like, you need to leave this, you need to get out, you got to run. And I thought, this is not who you are. Like, you know, I mean, I was like, talked myself into staying. I was like, everything's safe in this room. There is nobody trying to hurt you. Your feet are on the ground. You have autonomy to walk in or out of here. Like, I remember doing this dialogue and being like, what is happening? What? This isn't even a part of my personality. Like, but also learning, like, that is how much the person that I have been has had to dismiss in order to survive. And so I think a big part of that is that, you know, there would have been a lot less of a dynamic person. And I'm grateful for the dynamic person that is learning to human and be born into a new version of herself through this process.
Thank you for sharing that. That really means a lot to me as your friend to hear it, and I know to so many people that it's listening. And I'm so glad that you have allowed yourself to keep becoming and not quit on yourself, and just keep loving and learning. And you know, I'm going to use the word being brave, or the phrase being brave, but not in the way that the world defines it, as like you keep doing hard things, but more of like that you just keep breathing and waking up and just saying yes and moving through even the uncomfortable as you keep, you know, you keep going. So thank you for that. So Taylor, what have you learned about yourself in this last couple of years and the resetting, you know, process of what this last 3 years has brought you? And what have you learned about God and God's love for you? So two-part question.
They're very connected for me.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned that I'm worth it. I think that's the thing that I've learned the most. And that I'm worth it to him, and I always have been. And that our trauma is not a weakness, and it is not a threat, but it does require bravery, and it requires, you know, like, the whole world collectively experienced trauma through COVID, like, period. And we all have big T or little t, and in our nervous systems, how our nervous systems are set up defines sometimes how those are affect us. But I think that I've learned that God's deep care over our humanity and the way he created us was with the dynamic capacity to feel, to heal, to hold the brokenness of the things that we face in this world that are not always, they're not always tied up with a pretty bow. There's some just heavy things that we hold that there is no right answer or making sense of. And, you know, grief started teaching me that in my early 20s, and my dad was killed in a really tragic accident, which was like, there is no making this better. And we try to, right? I think that you hear that when people are like, oh, they're in a better place. Like, that doesn't make it better. For me. In fact, I actually now I'm struggling with the fact of how did love work if they can feel no pain and I feel great pain and they're separate? Like, that's the whole thing, you know, like, it just makes you ask these things. So I think my understanding of God has become a lot less boxed in the way of like who he was and my need to perform for him to deserve the gift of love that he gave me, into a broader understanding of his love for me is to invite me into a journey of knowing myself more, because I am made in his image. And through getting to know who he created me to be, I am becoming to know more of who he is.
Ooh.
And that's taken me a really long time because I haven't had a philosophy that I'm worth it, or that my philosophy isn't you've been broken. It's you're jacked up. Your thought process in this is messed up. It's got to be you. And through attuning to my story and the things that my body has learned through walking through the things that I've walked through in my life, is like, wait, actually, that's wisdom.
Yes.
And wisdom is sometimes really hard to hold, and it's not always perceived by everyone as that. And I don't have to disassociate it from it or judge it or dismiss it. I have to learn to be with it. And to me, that's really taught me a lot about the character of God and who God is in our lives and how he is with us.
Yeah.
And 𝐤𝐺-𝘆𝑚𝑦�'s book, I read it years ago, but I've come back to it again. I got to see him speak like probably 15 years ago. And I go back to that. It was just like this idea of being with, and the lessons and the journey and this life, this gift of this life, not just striving for what is ahead, but really learning to embrace what is here. And I don't do it well. I still battle it. I still long for comfort, and to not struggle, but I am learning to embrace and be present with the struggle so that I can experience the joy as well.
Amen. Amen. You're not alone in that struggle. The struggle is for all of us. Taylor, what would
and so right, like, I think too, understanding, I think I always have judged my struggle against like, well, that ain't that big. It could have been so much worse, or it's not. And really learning to just be like, oh, this is actually just the story that I have, the gift of my story and journey that I've been asked to walk through. And it's no less than and no greater than. It is just the lesson in which I'm getting to learn. And it's my job to tend to it with care and wisdom and humility and intention, so that I can better engage in the stories of those around me and beyond me, whose look way different than mine. But we can connect on that level of humanity and love, love for God and love for who he's created us to be.
You're teaching us and reminding us that compassion with self, when we start to be compassionate about our self, our stories, that from that flows more freedom and compassion and love for others. Like, but if we have a really hard time with being compassionate with our stories and all of our story and ourselves, that we are limited, and being able to be compassionate and hear story from someone else that is different from us, that has a different story than us. And I hope and pray that that is encouraging and creates some wonder for people that are listening or watching, on what areas am I not compassionate with myself, about what freedom and love might that unlock for my neighbor. As I'm more compassionate with self. I think that's a really
I used to always say, like, people would be like, give yourself grace. And I'd be like, where do you buy it?
like, how do I get that?
I would pay countless money for that, because I'm not getting it in here. Like, I don't have it to give myself. So like, I'll just get some.
Right.
That's been a road for me.
Is finding our way to giving ourselves more grace and compassion. And it's with the Lord, and with so much of, like, it takes time, but man, when that begins to unlock for self, it begins to unlock everywhere else. And there's so much goodness that can flow from that. Taylor, how would you encourage and give hope to the person that's listening or watching who is going through reset in their life? Like, what would you give them today if they're going through a reset, whatever that reset looks like for them? What would you tell them today?
Give yourself grace. It's worth it. And even though it feels like it will kill you, my experience is that it won't. I've said a lot, like it feels like laying down in front of a barreling train that's running me over. It's longer than I thought that it was. And so parts of you will die off. And those parts of you are worth grieving. They are worth missing. And if you don't, I don't know that you can let new parts of you fully come alive. And so I think be curious, and to the best of your ability, be kind. And for me, that kindness looks like sometimes saying things out loud. Like I said this to my kid yesterday. She said, "Are you even listening to me?" And I said, "Sweetie, there's 5 noises and 5 voices that are coming at me right now. And so honestly, I cannot hear you because your brother was talking first, and I hear your sister and your other brother and your dad. And my brain can only do one voice right now to focus. That's all my brain has capacity. I see you, but I cannot hear you right now." I don't like saying that. I like the old version of me that picked up. I just picked up what was going on here and picked up what was going on here, because that's how I knew everything going around, because that's how I needed to keep my environment safe. But now I'm learning to tune in, which means oh, you felt unheard, and that's not a good feeling, and it wasn't at you. And I'm gonna give myself grace, and I'm also going to communicate. So that I say that to say sometimes it looks like actually saying out loud, "This is my limitation." At 8:30 at night, when I get into bed and my husband's wanting to connect and tell a story about the day and I am tapped, I either want to snap at him, or I want to just pretend I'm listening, and to find the courage to say, I want to hear you, and what you say to me matters, and I have 0 capacity right now, and I need to lay down and let my body and my brain turn off. So yeah, there's hope. It won't kill you. Give yourself grace and communicate with the people around you, because it's also fair for them to grieve the version of you that they knew. And if you don't give yourself permission to grieve that, I think you limit other people's ability to grieve that with you, and to discover and be curious about who you're becoming.
Wise words from Taylor Nichols. Well, friend, as we end our time together, which I don't want to do, we're going to end with a few rapid fire questions to just wrap up our All of Us Reset episode. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
God is
love, kindness, consistent, worth it, pursuing you, way bigger than we know.
Resets in life are necessary because
we change, who we are evolves. We need to get to know ourselves again. And sometimes we can get really off course, and sometimes the course can change. And so we have to stop. Sometimes a slight shift, 2-degree shift, and sometimes a complete 180.
And all of us are better when
we know ourselves well, when we can hold space for one another, when we allow people space to have their own journey, which I think we do by allowing that for our own selves as well. And when we show compassion.
Thank you, friend, for being on All of Us and for sharing your in-process story of reset over the last few years, and just being who you are and allowing yourself to continue to become what God intended for you to be in this world, and for the love that you share with your husband and with your kids, with your community, with your friendships, with those that you have interviewed and will interview, those that you'll meet in the store when you're grocery shopping, and for those that don't know you yet. Thank you for being who you are. your genius is, it can't be found anywhere else and in anyone else. And I'm grateful to God that you're one of one and that I get to know you. So thanks for just sharing just a little bit of who Taylor Nichols has been, who she is now, and by the grace of God, we'll see where we're going. I love you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. I love you, and thank you for leaning into this space and creating space for in-process stories to be shared and seen by others. I think we need that in the world. I far too often want to wait until the story is complete, just to give a recipe, and I'm learning that, it's a spot of this and a dash of that. So thank you for modeling that for us. I love you. I love knowing you. I love being your friend.
And if people want to connect with you, Taylor, how do they do that? Where can you be found if they wanted to do that?
Sometimes on the gram is probably the best place for me. I have a tenuous relationship with the gift of social media, and so Nichols_Taylor is the best place there. I probably will get a message. It may not be timely, or you could email me at taylor@taylornicholsmedia.com. And again, I'm not always great at the response, but I trust that when I do get to it, it's the right timing. So those would be the best two ways to reach me.
Sounds good. And we'll put all that in the blog. Go read the blog. Her blog is even more rich. Well, I'll say not even more, but it is rich, just like this conversation. So go read the blog and listen to this episode. Send it out to friends. And Taylor also provided a ton of really good tools for what has helped her in these last few years that I will also put in the show notes and on the blog. So till next time, all of us. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.